Rob, before we conclude this series of videos, I did want to ask you what your opinion was on something. I just had a conversation with someone who is intelligent. He's an intelligent person, about the rhetoric of the current president, Donald Trump. And the conversation sort of went like this. I was asked why I disapproved of Donald Trump, and I said it's mostly, not mostly. It's in a great deal of it is the rhetoric he uses. There's a lot of other things as well that I disagree with, but the rhetoric is brutal. And he said, well, it's not what he says, but what he does that matters. And I just really struggled with a statement like that because I know you're familiar with Abraham Joshua Heschel's statement, words create worlds. And I know that Abraham Heschel's background, there's a lot of weight behind his statement like that. So I mentioned that, and I mentioned that the history of using words to create situations and worlds that demonize others, and actually lead to the genocide or degradation or whatever, oppression of others.
Yeah.
And as the conversation went along, this person, and I know it's not just them because I hear this quite a bit from others here as well. They say that what's so refreshing about Donald Trump in office is that he's fighting for us. At least he's using rhetoric that fights back. And I actually said that it's about time that someone stands up for the white man. What exactly is going on here? What is the basis of this? What is the basis, do you think, of white people, especially white males, looking at someone who's using the rhetoric that Donald Trump does and sees it actually saying refreshing, this is refreshing, and sees that they're in danger from minorities, in danger from different genders, I guess, in danger. One of the things that was brought up was that there are groups that protect minorities, there are groups that protect women, there are groups that protect the LGBTQ community, but there are no groups that protect white males. And I mentioned that the whole system of the U.S. protects white males, but and I think actually he agreed with that. But I'm just curious, what do you think is behind all of this rhetoric? What is behind all of this offensive defense that we're seeing from white males right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think on one level it's what we might call a rhetoric of embattlement. So it's that the language that we use that constantly puts forward the idea that we're on the receiving end of an attack of one kind or another. And I think this is something that white males in particular are actually very good at. I think it's easy for us to use language as a way, as a tool to draw attention back to us when we feel that the attention is being taken away. And what that actually is saying is that we are very fragile about our whiteness and our maleness. And I think it's actually hugely problematic because on a number of different levels, we're buying into the narrative that says, when we use that language of embattlement, we're buying into a narrative that says that we have to push back, we have to reclaim what has been taken away from us, reclaim the ground that has been taken by minority groups, whether those minority groups are LGBTQI, or whether those minority groups are black or colored, people of color, or whether those are what we, whatever other group, minority group is taking or laying claim to what we've become accustomed to. And I think the problem is that we're failing to see how much of the system has been for our advantage. It's been our system built by us and for us and in defense of us, right? And part of dismantling that is not only disruptive, but it evokes this kind of fragile response. I think what we actually need to do is replace the rhetoric of embattlement with a rhetoric of engagement, and actually work through what it is that we as white men are feeling, because I think you don't need to be a supporter of Trump to have that fragility surface at some point or another. And I think if we're honest with ourselves as white men, we have to confess to the fact that there's a sense in which what we have become accustomed to, that there's a sense that that's actually getting lost, but it's actually not. It's not, in my take on it, it's not that it's actually getting lost or that it's been taken away. I think what we're witnessing is how toxic that system has actually been, and those who've been on the receiving end of that toxicity are pushing back and disrupting and asking the right kinds of questions and saying, actually, you don't get to be in charge anymore. And I think we need to do the serious work ourselves in wrestling with how we feel about what's going on, and also confront our complicity within those systems of privilege, of white male privilege specifically, and then ask ourselves, well, how do we change that story? And I think that's a very unsettling kind of place to be in, but I think it's exactly the place that we need to be in. It doesn't feel very natural for us at the moment, but I think that's just part of what we need to wrestle with.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think one of the points that I really resonated with what you just said was that Amanda and I were talking about this, where LeBron James just started his school system, where I'm not sure exactly how it all works out. I think I think he personally funds inner city Cleveland kids to go to that school or something along those lines. And President Trump interjected himself into the situation with some out there comment, and all of a sudden Donald Trump was in the news again. And I mentioned to Amanda, I said, it's so strange. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do. It's not even a critique of Donald Trump. LeBron James didn't critique him when he did this. So why is he inserting himself into this story? But once he did, all of a sudden, it was a conversation between LeBron James and Donald Trump, which brought him back into the public sphere. And I guess that is, I think Chris Hedges at one point says this, but it might have been Cornel West too, or one or the other, said that he's not an aberration of the U.S. system. He's not, someone who is unique in the American system. He is someone who is actually symptomatic of America, or a large portion of America. So we don't just see someone who, we're all better than him. We actually see someone that kind of reflects us in this way. There was another thing I wanted to mention as well. So we talk about engagement of the other, or engagement of someone who's not a white male, to get their perspective on things. As white males, you're saying that actually there's good questions being asked by those who are not white males. There are good questions by those who are on the periphery or on the margins of they're being asked of white males, and it's challenging the system. It's challenging the power of the dominant white male leadership. So you are saying that there is a quote unquote threat to the current way of things. As white males, I know there's a new project you're kind of working on. As white males, what would a Christian response be to all of this?
So part of the work that we need to be doing is dismantling that system that has supported us, and that's a difficult thing to do, because we, as I said, we have derived something from it. We've gained from the system, but I believe that as Christ followers in particular, we carry a responsibility to ask ourselves how we take the privilege that we've accrued as a consequence of the system that we have constructed, which has been in support of people who look like us, and in many ways empty ourselves of that privilege. Yeah. So the dismantling of white male privilege is something that white males need to do. And the example, and this is part of a work in progress for me, I'm busy working on the outline for my second book, in which I want to explore what it would look like for white men in particular to no longer be fragile either about their whiteness or their maleness. And when I say no longer, what I mean to say is that it's a life project. It's not a once-off. It's not something that we go to a couple of workshops about, read a couple of good books on. This is a lifelong project, right? But to wrestle with the idea of what I'm calling kenotic masculinity. Kenotic means emptying, right? It's a word that is used in Philippians chapter 2, where Paul gives us what is known as the Christ hymn. And in that Christ hymn, Paul describes Jesus as somebody who being equal with God, does not consider his equality with God as something to be exploited for his own advantage, but he empties himself. Kenosis is the word. He empties himself and takes on the form of a human and that of a slave. And so I want to wrestle with the idea of what kenotic masculinity could mean within the context of white male privilege. And I think that's part of the dismantling process, is recognizing the privilege in the first place, and then at the same time saying, how do I leverage that privilege in a kenotic way? And I think in so doing, come closer to the kind of thing that I think we see Jesus doing. And in many ways, that Philippians 2 passage represents a fundamental redefinition of God. That God is defined as the one who relinquishes, rather than one who acquires and holds on to. So what would that mean for us as white men in particular? So it's a very rough description, a very basic outline of what I'm wanting to do there.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Actually, at this point, I was hoping that maybe you would tell us a little bit more about your book, the one that we've been discussing. Maybe I think that you've talked about your new project. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say. You can mention that there as well. But then also, can you tell the listeners / viewers where they can find you on the internet if you want them to find you?
I suppose it's not a bad thing to be found. I don't have a problem with engaging the listeners or the viewers in further conversation around some of the stuff that we've been chatting about over the series. Primary place to track me down would be my website, robstegmann.com. It's ROBSTEGMANN.com. and you can go and take a look at some of the stuff that I've written there. It's primarily a blog, but there's also a contact form, and if you want to reach out to me, then you can do it that way. And then the book that should be out sometime this year, hopefully, COVID-19 notwithstanding, is called Contested Masculinities, and it wrestles with the idea of how we understand masculinity within the first century context, looks at 1 Thessalonians as an example of exploring a range of possibilities that kind of open up the conversation around this particular topic. And and so there's a lot of work still to be done on all fronts, but I'm excited about where this series goes, and definitely have enjoyed our conversations.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. I know it's late nights sometime, and I apologize to you and Nikki, your wife, for keeping you so late. But yeah, thanks so much for all of this. I think it's been really helpful for me, and I hope it's been helpful for others as well. And see you next time.
Cool.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us in this whole set of videos discussing post-colonial masculine gender studies. Dr. Rob Stegmann and I have really enjoyed the journey, and we put a lot of time in it, and I hope that you have enjoyed the journey as well, and I hope that it's been something that's been worthwhile watching. If you have any questions for us, well, first of all, if you haven't noticed that we have 2 sets of videos before this set of videos, we actually have a series 1 and 2, and this is series 3. So if you haven't watched series 1 and 2, please feel free to go back and watch those series. A lot of what we say here, I feel like a lot of what we're saying here is kind of has its foundation or kind of draws from those first 2 series of videos. So if you watch all these 3 series and you still have questions for us and you still don't know where we're coming from, or you have something to follow up on, or something that you think we might have missed, or something that you need us to address, please feel free to put those comments below either the blog or the videos in YouTube. I know I'm checking the comments underneath, and I'm sure Dr. Rob Stegmann is as well. And we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to also try to field those questions if possible. So this is the end of this post-colonial masculine gender studies journey, at least for now. We may have other videos or audio podcasts or episodes in the future, but for now, this is kind of the end of this. So again, thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully you'll see more from us soon.